So I was supposed to be arranged with a girl and get married to her because of her family ties. Apparently, it's going to strengthen our family's power or something like that. Well, I have news for my family. I fell in love with another girl. Her name's Rose. Well, guys, let me tell you all about Rose. All my life, decisions have always been made for me. I've always been made to believe that being rich automatically means you needed to make some certain decisions that the society would approve of, even at the expense of your happiness. My parents made most of my decisions for me, and sincerely, I never really had any reason to question them, until I met a certain lady, Rose. At the age of 25, my parents introduced me to the daughter of an influential businessman. In fact, this introduction was mainly made because the father of the lady introduced me as one of my father's business partners. The lady, Lisa, only just graduated from college some months ago, and her father thought it's best if she moved next stage of her life, which was probably getting married. I found Lisa really physically attractive, but wasn't particularly head over heels in love with her. My parents said nothing about us getting engaged, but one way or the other, Lisa's father and my parents kept scheduling meetings for us, just so we could get to know each other. She seemed like a really nice lady, and in no time, I just felt it was normal to ask her out. I wasn't in love with her, but then asking her to be my girlfriend felt like the normal thing to do, especially when people around us were already pairing me and Lisa together, even before we started dating. 2 years into our normal relationship, I met another girl. Her name is Rosemary, but I prefer to call her Rose, the most beautiful flower. This new girl was an intern in the company my father made me the assistant manager director. Obviously, it was my dad's plan to make me and my twin brother carry out the family's business legacy. I never really objected to that, neither did my brother. My twin brother, Neil, got married a year after college. Our father set him up with his inheritance already and also a good position at the family company. I, on the other hand, had to get married before any subject relating to inheritance was brought before me. However, meeting Rose changed things for me. I could say that she was the reason I discovered another career and life path for myself. Rose was an intern at the company I was managing. She was quite outspoken, passionate, determined to be independent, and had some ideologies that many would tag as feminist. She seemed quite different from the other girls I've met. She wasn't sophisticated like them or dressed like them, but Rose was so down to earth. She was so real. I was attracted at first sight, but my ego almost made me overlook her. I was a boss at the company she was interning at. Getting attracted to Rose was somewhat unprofessional, however. I just couldn't exactly help my feelings, though. I was intrigued, interested in knowing her. Within 2 months of knowing her, I decided that I was going to ask her on a date. It seemed quite unprofessional, dating an intern that was working in my company. I contemplated not asking her out, as it might compromise her working relationship with me and the company, and also probably made her the center of attention for everyone in the company. I was quite afraid to ask her out, but we kept on going with the friendship. A year later, Rose completed her internship program, but announced that she got another job opportunity from a different company that benefits her better. I felt that was the end of whatever friendship was going on between us. However, turns out that her new workplace, and even where she resided, wasn't so far away from my place. This gave me hope, because not only would I still get to see Rose, but also I could ask her out since she wasn't working from the company anymore. I simply could not ask Rose out until Lisa was out of the picture. Lisa was a really nice person, but we really didn't have much going on between us. The bond, it wasn't so strong. Sincerely, I felt there was someone better for Lisa out there, so I broke it off with her. But I could not stop feeling really guilty about it, and I did not wish to break her heart, but the love just wasn't there. I broke up with Lisa without informing my parents and then proceeded to start dating Rose. About 2 weeks later, my parents found out from Lisa that we've broken our engagements. My mother confronted me about it, but I told her that there's hardly any real love between us. I was surprised when she told me to introduce Rose to her. Somehow she had found out about the other lady, and I was expecting her to flare up and tell me to break up with Rose at this very moment. But she was calm. I brought Rose home for a family dinner, and they seemed quite nice towards her. However, I had no idea that my parents had set a trap for her. They began asking her questions relating to her family background, and in no time started to mock her with words. My mom told Ray straight to her face that her son, talking about me, was only going to use her for pleasure but can never actually wed her. This set the tension on the table and you could cut it with a knife, and this dinner was cut short. Rose understood that I still loved her very much, but that my parents were the problem. She excused herself nicely from the table, gave me a peck on the cheek, and then left. Well, I stayed back to confront my parents, but then they told me that they would never stand by and let one of their sons destroy their family's reputation. Rose is way below your class, they would tell me. That's the exact words out of my mother's mouth. That night, they made it clear that if I continued my relationship with Rose, then I should consider my inheritance gone. They said they were going to sit back and let everything they've invested in become a waste. Yeah, right. I actually did not count anything they said seriously, at least not the night. I guess my parents noticed that I never broke off my relationship with Rose, so a few days later, my father made sure that I was restricted from gaining access to the company's account. This angered me so much, and when I confronted him about it, he simply told me that I knew the right thing to do. My whole life has been dictated by my parents. I wasn't going to stand by and let them decide my relationship life for me again. So, I left my father's company and with my certificate got another job in another industry. The hiring manager was quite surprised after running a background check on me. He figured out quickly that I came from a wealthy home. He also found out that I was a boss at a large organization, which was my family's business. He didn't bother to ask me why I left, so I just began working. Although it was a lower position, my parents found out and they regarded it as embarrassing. Working in another company as a son of a billionaire seemed like a slap in the face. At least that's how my mother described it. However, I wasn't about to let them influence me anymore. I'd made a decision the week I got the job that I was going to be totally on my own. Rose had already started to blame herself for the rift between me and my family. She felt guilty for me coming into my life, or just accepting to date me at all. On several occasions, she had tried to break it off, but I have convinced her that if we were going to break up, then it wasn't going to be because of my family. I had some personal savings with me that even my father had no access to, and with that, moved out of the family mansion and got myself a decent apartment in town. My mother thought I was going too far and was alarmed that something needed to be done. However, my father felt that I wasn't going to last on my own much longer, so he didn't say anything about me moving out. According to him, he wasn't going to identify with a son who did not follow the family's tradition of getting married to someone with a, quote, name. So I left the house, moved to the apartment, and began my new life. Rose moved in with me about a month later after getting the apartment. I wanted her to know that I was serious, super serial, about our relationship, so I got a ring for her shortly after she moved in with me. Some of my friends felt I was moving a bit too fast with the relationship, and some others told me my relationship with Rose wasn't worth the dispute I was having with my parents. I let them understand that if my parents would not accept me for the life I chose to live, or who I chose to live it with, then I probably shouldn't have much to do with them. My brother tried convincing me to move back home. He also believed I would not last long on my own. Quote, "You need to listen to mom and dad, bro. It's for your own good." That's what he would say to me. I reminded him of his wife, how she wasn't also wealthy before he met her, but then he was quick to tell me that at least her parents were known in society and had noble connections. Even though they weren't really rich, my brother tried on several occasions to make me come back home, but I would not budge. After a while, he respected my decision to stay with Rose, and then tried reasoning with our parents to consider Rose. My parents would not budge. Rose meant nothing to them. I mean nothing. One evening, I came back to the apartment, then Rose's possessions were gone. A text beeped on my phone, and then what it said was something that broke my heart. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this anymore. Love, Rose." I knew immediately that it had something to do with my family. Rose had been pressuring me to leave so I could return back. I spent the next few days trying to reach out to Rose. She wasn't in any of her friends' place, even parents' house. Although it seemed her parents knew where she was, I felt a bit foolish, changing the direction of my life for love only to be betrayed, stabbed in the back. I understood that Rose felt like she was getting in the way between I and my parents, but I was the one who made the decision to stick with her. Well, Rose came back a few days later. She said my mother offered her a large amount of cash just so she could leave, although she declined the money but still promised to leave because she did not want to be the reason I wasn't with my family anymore. She left town to stay at her sister's place but immediately felt like a coward for abandoning me. She changed her mind to come back because, according to her, I was a grown man capable of making his decisions, and her leaving might not exactly make me happy. I was so glad she came back, but we fought about it. I couldn't believe that she even thought of leaving me, but I was quickly to realize that she wasn't exactly the one to blame. I drove down to that mansion just to confront my mother. She was quite shocked that Rose came back. Well, this frustrated my parents, and they told me how their friends and our extended family had begun to complain about my decisions. I told them it wasn't going to change. I decided to let them go and move on with my life. For several months, I maintained no contact with them, and they did not bother. Not even bother to do so too. About a year later, my mother called me just to say she misses me. My brother came to my apartment just to tell me that our parents have already forgiven me, as if I cared in the first instance. He told me that they've already decided to let me be with who I loved. He told me that my ex, Lisa, was already married to someone else. Rose was already pregnant by the time my family tried reaching out to me. We had also done our courthouse wedding without inviting any family members. I told my brother that I did not need my parents' forgiveness anymore and I was okay with my life. He informed me of their plan to restore back my inheritance, but I simply wasn't interested. My parents then tried to reach out to me. Yeah, several times. They didn't seem to care about who I got married to anymore. However, I was determined not to have anything to do with them again. My brother pleaded with me to be part of the family again, and after several pleadings, I finally restored my relationship back with our parents. They also did not complain about Rose anymore. 1 year had seemed to change them. They had realized that my happiness was probably all that mattered. It was quite obvious that my mother still did not like Rose, because after the reconciliation, they still did not exactly treat her like she was one of the family. But they had no choice but to accept her as part of my life. They couldn't influence me anymore, as I wasn't enjoying any of the family benefits like before. My parents discussed about how they were going to set me up again. My father had already informed the company without my knowledge that I was coming back as the managing director very soon. However, I wasn't interested anymore. Not only was I content with the job I got after leaving their house, but my online business, which I started months ago after leaving home, was thriving. I told my parents I did not need their inheritance anymore, and I certainly would not return back to the company. For several years, my father had talked about how I and my twin brother would take over the family legacy. I didn't really sit down to think about anything that could have prevented me from getting my inheritance, not until Rose walked into my life. That day I'll never forget, and now even after the reconciliation, I somehow derive joy in building my life all on my own. They probably saw it as ego or that I haven't forgiven them yet, but I saw it as being a man of my own, making a name for myself. I continued my relationship with them, but then with no benefits involved. They had no choice but to respect my decision. Rose gave birth to our daughter 4 months after I reconciled. My parents welcomed their grandchild with open arms. It was quite obvious that they wanted a relationship with her, and Rose encouraged it. My mother even went as far as spending some few days at our apartment when my daughter was born. I also got to find out from my mother that my father had already kept some wealth aside for my daughter that would be accessible to her when she clocked 18. They strive so hard to make up for their past mistakes, trying every method to let me accept my inheritance. I should have refused the money aside for my little girl by saying that they had no right to her. But they are her grandparents after all, and I decided to let her clock 18, and then truly figure out for herself if she wanted the wealth or not. I wouldn't come in the way of that. Certainly, my daughter might not want to refuse such wealth, but then I would make sure that she would not be influenced by my grandparents. Neither would I make her do something her heart just doesn't really desire. Well, in this case, it seemed like OP all he had to do was play a waiting game against him and his family. Well, it didn't really matter because at the end of the day, when his family came crawling back to him, trying to get their relationship fixed, he said, "I'm with Rose now. I don't need you in my life. You are part of my past and you were extremely toxic and put me in a bad headspace." So, that's that. Let me know what you think. Do you think OP should fully just forgive his parents? Or do you not blame him for the route he's chosen to go? Drop your comments about this one, guys, in the comment section, or if you have a similar story you want to share, maybe from your experience or a friend's experience, make sure to drop that down too. The second story we're going to look at is the final story of the day. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife it's her own fault for not getting invited on a friend group trip? Me and my wife have been together for about 6 years. We got along wonderfully and through everything have never had any major fights except for one thing. I personally feel like my wife makes no effort to get along with my friends. Now, to give context, all my friends and I went to the same university for undergraduate. 3 guys and 3 girls that are married. My wife is the only one that did not have this common trait of attending undergrad between the 8 of us, which is really not a big deal if you ask me. Early on in our relationship, my friend would always try and be friendly to her, talk to her, when we would do our mutual hangouts. My wife was cordial, but you could tell that she was not comfortable. I would speak with her about this, and she would always comment and say that she's an outsider of all of us. This was personally made me slightly miffed, because I felt that my friends always made an effort to include her and make sure that she wasn't singled out. Throughout the years, my wife would attend events with me, but would seem distant and would sometimes skip group events to hang with her college friends, if she had something else planned. My friends never said anything, but were always nice and treated her kindly. Well, this week I got a group text from my friends about planning a group vacation to somewhere next year. I quickly noticed my wife was not on the group text and asked about it. I got a call from one of my friends who basically said they did not invite my wife because, number one, based on all the previous interactions, they did not think she would attend. Number two, even if she did attend, her attitude's crappy and they don't want it to ruin the vacation. Well, I thanked my friend for his honesty and I told him I'd think about it. And while I love my wife, I figured she more than likely would not want to go on vacation with them. So I told my wife about the trip and she asked about the details. I told her that while I was invited, she wasn't. And it wasn't because of anything she did, but because they thought she would not want to attend. Well, this statement just seemed to be about how she's an outsider, She said that because of the history of us seven had together, she had no chance of ever being a part of the friend group. She then went on a rant about how my friends are awful people and that she deserved to be invited even if she didn't want to be there because she is my wife. I sat there and listened to her vent, and I finally calmly told her that it was pretty much her own fault for not being invited because she's been taking such hostile stances with them from the get-go. She became a self-fulfilling prophecy about being an outsider. Well, that's paraphrasing, but something along those lines. She left the house and went to her mother's. I haven't spoken to her in several days despite text and phone calls to try to get in touch with her. I probably should have been more diplomatic about what I said, but I do feel my friends have been treated unfairly. Am I the a-hole? Okay, so this comment got so much attention. You are the a-hole. You're the a-hole for not declining the event when they made it clear your wife wasn't invited. It's all couples, all spouses, except her. You can call it self-fulfilling prophecy if you like, but they really are proving exactly what she's feared all along. That you not only did not defend your wife, but thanks to the friend who spelled out why she wasn't invited, it's the definition of yikes. Also, want to call out this line. She would sometimes skip group events to hang out with her college friends if she had something else planned. If she had something else planned, she did not skip your event. She had plans with the equivalent group to the one you had plans with. Guys, I don't know. That last part just made a lot of sense to me. I mean, she had plans, dude. Alright guys, let me know if you agree with this commenter or not. Drop your thoughts down below. Let's discuss it in the comment section. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.